My name is Margaret. I'm 85 years old. I'm recording this because I want to tell you about something I've been thinking about for a long time now. Something I didn't see happening until it was already done. I know exactly when I stopped being seen. It wasn't one moment, but there was one moment when I realized it had already happened. I used to be someone people looked at, not in a vain way. I don't mean that. But I was present. I was in the room. When I spoke, people turned. When I walked into a party or a meeting, or even just the kitchen, I was noticed. I didn't think about it then. You don't when you're young. You don't realize that being seen is something that can be taken away. I thought it was just part of being alive. I raised 3 children. I worked as a nurse for 32 years. I was married to a man named Robert for 41 years before he died. I had a life that mattered. I still do. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible. It started small. I remember being at a dinner with Robert and some of his colleagues. This was maybe 15 years ago. I was 70. Still working. Still sharp. I said something at the table. I don't even remember what it was. Something about the hospital, I think. No one responded. Robert kept talking. The man across from me kept talking. It was like I hadn't said anything at all. I thought maybe they didn't hear me, so I said it again a little louder. Still nothing. Robert touched my hand under the table, gently, like he was saying, "It's okay, let it go." And I did, but I felt something that night, something I didn't have a name for yet. A few months later, I was at the grocery store. I was standing in line at the deli counter, waiting my turn. A younger woman, maybe in her 40s, stepped up beside me. She didn't look at me. She just started talking to the man behind the counter. He helped her first. I stood there holding my number, and I didn't say anything. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe I hadn't been clear. Maybe I'd missed something, but I knew I hadn't. After Robert died, it got worse. We used to go to things together. Dinners, gatherings, church events, fundraisers. When he was alive, people would come up to us. They'd ask how we were. They'd make conversation. After he died, I kept going to those same places, but people didn't come up to me anymore. They'd smile if I passed by. They'd nod. But no one asked me how I was. No one pulled me into a conversation. At first, I thought it was because they didn't know what to say. Grief makes people uncomfortable. But it kept happening. Months later, a year later, I started to realize it wasn't about Robert, it was about me. I remember one Sunday after church, I was standing near the door, waiting to say hello to the pastor. A group of women I'd known for years were talking nearby. They were laughing about something. One of them was telling a story. I walked over. I smiled. I stood there, waiting to be included. They kept talking. I stood there for maybe a minute, maybe 2. Then I just walked away. I don't think they meant to hurt me. I don't think anyone means to do it. But that's what makes it so hard, because there's no one to blame. There's nothing to point to. You just become less. I tried to fight it for a while. I made more effort. I called people. I invited friends over for tea. I volunteered at the hospital again just to be around people, and some of it worked for a while, but I noticed something. When I spoke, people would wait for me to finish, then turn to someone else. When I told a story, they'd nod politely, but their eyes would drift. When I asked a question, they'd answer, but they wouldn't ask me one back. I wasn't part of the conversation anymore. I was just there. One afternoon, I was at my daughter's house. She was hosting a barbecue. The whole family was there, my grandchildren, their friends, my son-in-law's parents. I was sitting on the porch, watching everyone. My daughter was inside with some of the other women. They were laughing, talking about their kids, their jobs, their lives. I got up and went inside. I stood near the counter. They kept talking. I poured myself some water. I waited. One of them glanced at me, smiled, then turned back to the conversation. I stood there for a few more seconds. Then I went back outside. That night I cried, not because I was angry, not because I felt sorry for myself, but because I finally understood I had become old. And in becoming old, I had become invisible. I started paying attention after that. I noticed it everywhere. At the bank, the teller would look past me to help the person behind me. At the doctor's office, the nurse would explain things slowly, like I couldn't understand. At the store, salespeople would ignore me unless I asked for help directly, and even then, they'd be polite, professional, but not warm, not interested. I wasn't imagining it. I read an article once a few years ago about a study. They showed people photographs of faces, young faces, middle-aged faces, old faces. They asked people to remember them. The young faces people remembered, the old faces they forgot. I thought about that for a long time. We forget old people, even when they're standing right in front of us. The hardest part wasn't being ignored by strangers. The hardest part was being ignored by the people I loved. My son lives 2 hours away. He calls me once a week, sometimes twice. We talk for maybe 10 minutes. He asks how I am. I say I'm fine. He tells me about work, about the kids. Then he says he has to go. I don't blame him. He's busy. I know that. But I remember when he used to call me for advice, when he used to ask me what I thought. Now, he just checks in, like I'm something on a list. My daughter is different. She's warmer. She invites me over. But when I'm there, I feel like a guest. Not in a bad way. She's kind. She makes sure I'm comfortable. But I'm not part of the rhythm of the house anymore. The kids run in and out. They hug me when they arrive, then disappear. My daughter talks to me while she's doing other things. Cooking, cleaning, texting. I sit at the table and I watch, and I feel like I'm taking up space. I know they love me, I do. But I also know I'm not central anymore. I'm not the person they come to. I'm the person they take care of. There was a moment, maybe 2 years ago, when I really saw it. It was my birthday. My daughter threw me a small party. She made a cake. The grandkids sang. My son came with his family. It was lovely. But at some point, I was sitting there, watching everyone talk and laugh, and I realized something. They were celebrating me, but they weren't with me. They were going through the motions, doing what you do for someone's birthday. But the conversation wasn't about me. The laughter wasn't because of me. I was just the occasion. I went home that night and I sat in my living room. The house was quiet. And I thought about all the years I spent being the center of things, not because I demanded it, but because that's what mothers are. That's what wives are. You're the one people need. And then one day, you're not. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was when the kids grew up and moved out. Maybe it was when Robert died. Maybe it was just time. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being necessary. And when you stop being necessary, people stop seeing you. I'm not angry about it. I was for a while, but not anymore, because I understand now. This is what happens. You get old. Your body slows down. Your mind stays sharp, but people don't know that. They see the outside. They see the gray hair, the wrinkles, the slower movements, and they assume you're not there anymore, not the way you used to be. But I am. I'm still here. I still think. I still feel. I still have things to say, but no one's listening. I think about the women I knew when I was younger, the older women at church, the older nurses at the hospital. I remember thinking they were sweet, nice, but I didn't really see them either. I didn't ask them about their lives. I didn't wonder what they were thinking. I just smiled and moved on. And now I'm them. I've started doing something lately. I've started speaking anyway, even when I know people aren't listening. I'll say what I was going to say. I'll finish my thought. Sometimes people hear me. Sometimes they don't. But I say it anyway, because I realize something. If I stop speaking, I disappear completely. I also started going places alone. I go to the museum on Thursday mornings. I sit in the gallery and I look at the paintings. I go to the library and I read in the corner by the window. I go to the park and I watch the birds. And I don't wait for someone to come with me, because if I wait, I'll be waiting forever. There's a woman I see sometimes at the library. She's around my age, maybe a little older. We've never spoken, but we nod to each other, and I think she understands. I think she knows what it's like. I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me. I don't want that. I'm saying it because I think there are people watching this who know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're older, and you've felt it too. Maybe you're younger, and you've seen it happen to someone you love, or maybe you've done it without realizing. I used to think getting old meant slowing down, retiring, resting, watching the world from a distance. And maybe that's part of it. But what I didn't expect was the loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being in a room full of people and still feeling invisible. I wish I had known this was coming. I wish someone had told me. Not so I could stop it. I don't think you can, but so I could have been kinder to the people I didn't see. I think about my mother sometimes. She lived to be 91. For the last 10 years of her life, she barely left the house. I used to visit her once a week. I'd bring groceries. I'd sit with her for a little while. But I was always busy. I always had somewhere else to be. I thought I was doing enough. But now, I wonder if she felt the way I feel. If she sat in that house, waiting for someone to really see her. And I didn't. I can't go back and change that. But I think about it. Here's what I know now. Being seen isn't about being young or beautiful or important. It's about being acknowledged. It's about someone looking at you and recognizing that you're still a person, that you still matter, that you're still here. And when that stops happening, something inside you changes. You start to pull back. You start to expect less. You start to make yourself smaller so it doesn't hurt as much when people look past you. But I don't want to be small. I don't want to disappear quietly. I want to be here, fully here, for as long as I have. So I keep going to the museum. I keep calling my children, even when the conversations are short. I keep speaking even when no one's listening, because I'm still here, and I still have something to say. I don't know how much longer I have, maybe a few years, maybe more. But I know this. I will not spend what's left waiting to be seen. I will see myself. If you're watching this and you're young, I want you to remember something. The old people in your life, your parents, your grandparents, the woman at the grocery store, the man at the bus stop, they're still people. They're not decoration. They're not background. They have whole lives inside them, and they're still here. And if you're watching this, and you're old like me, I want you to know something too. You're not invisible. You're just not seen the way you used to be, but that doesn't mean you're not here. It doesn't mean you don't matter. I'm 85 years old, and I know exactly when I stopped being seen, but I also know this, I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. If this meant something to you, I'd like to hear from you. You don't have to say much, just let me know you were here. That's all.